I just thought it was very brave, and we've had this discussion all the time, where people with a platform, should they use their platform to make these kinds of political statements? I think yes.
First of all, I call BS on saying that it's brave to call out the president. It's more brave to be a conservative in Hollywood. I have no friends personally who've been blackballed for their political beliefs. I like Eminem. I always have. That being said, just let me listen just 1 second, and then I really would like your perspective. So I remember when Eminem went after President Bush when I was younger, and he said, quote, I don't rap for dead presidents. I'd rather see the president dead. And he was actually investigated by the Secret Service in 2003. And I think for me, what's so interesting, what I think has helped breed Trump, is when all Republicans are Nazis and the worst and awful, sometimes if you cry wolf hard enough, the wolf will eventually show up in one form or another. And I would be curious, if Mike Pence were president, would some of these people who have all these problems still have the same problems with him that they do with Trump?
We don't know. I don't know, but I will say this. You know, people, when they speak their mind as themselves, it is a brave move, because it's very dangerous, and people will take you out. People will come up and spit on you, hit you, yell at you, kick you.
But it's more socially acceptable to be liberal in Hollywood than it is to be conservative.
It's actually not acceptable to be... Here's the thing. Hollywood started out as a very, as you know, very right-wing sort of area. That's why all of the stuff with Dalton Trumbo happened, because people were concerned about communists and all kinds of stuff, and then we had the blacklist and all that kind of stuff. Then it made a shift, and it went to the left. And so Hollywood fluctuates depending on who is in. And when I say who is in, I don't mean who's in office, it's who's in style.
I lived in Los Angeles for a year and a half working on another show, and I have never been more harassed for being a Republican than I was in the time that I lived there. So maybe it's a different kind of place. I've never felt that way in New York City. I've never felt that place any place else. But I will say that New York it is brave. All artists making a stand, all commentators making a stand. On this show, we all come out and make opinions that are controversial every day. Every person on this panel knows what it feels like. Yes, it is brave. But I am saying that I think when you talk to people like Tim Allen, it is more socially acceptable to be an Obama supporter, to be a Hillary Clinton supporter, to be a Bernie supporter, than it would be to be any conservative
Except
supporter.
that all the conservatives are working. They're the ones who have the jobs. Tim Allen has never stopped
They're
working.
all working.
Oh, shoot.
Tom Selleck, thank you. Periodically, the brain just
Do you believe
goes.
James Woods that he's retiring for his politics? But most conservatives get one person on every panel other than on Fox News. So there is an element of minority to being a conservative in mainstream anything. We may disagree on it. I don't obviously know Hollywood history.
I've been a minority my whole life, but I'm not the only one that has experienced that.
You would be surprised to find out how much of the fluctuation has gone on. I'll give you some books.
Now to a controversial new theory that suggests there's an ongoing liberal bias in Hollywood. In a book entitled Primetime Propaganda, the true Hollywood story of how the left took over your TV, conservative columnist and radio host Ben Shapiro has set out to prove, well, we're all being brainwashed. Yes, according to Mr. Shapiro, even Elmo is in on the plan to swing America to the left. I'm delighted to say that Ben joins us now live in the studio. Good afternoon.
Thanks so much for having me.
How is Hollywood liberal?
I mean, from top to bottom, from executives to creators to producers, I mean, these are all people who believe in one particular mindset. It's an echo chamber. If you've spent any time at all out in Hollywood, you know that most people tend to think alike politically. They tend to hang out with people who think like they do politically, and therefore their work tends to result in liberal propaganda.
How then do you explain Fox News, or the success of American Idol, or the success of the Jersey Shore? What have they got to do with left-leaning bias?
Well, I mean, Fox News is not particularly an entertainment-oriented. I mean, maybe you think it is, but it's not. It's a news channel in the same way that MSNBC is a news channel. My book is really not about the news. It's about entertainment-oriented programming. American Idol, to me, is actually a response to a lot of the liberal programming that's been in scripted television. The focus of primetime propaganda is really unscripted. I think the rise of reality television actually has a lot to do with the fact that the American people are interested in seeing things that aren't quite as one-sided. I mean, American Idol is actually a conservative show, in my view.
Is 24?
No, of course 24 is a conservative show, or at least was until Janine Garofalo showed up. But 24 is one show out of literally hundreds, and I profile probably 100 separate shows in my book. It's always easy to pick one example of a conservative show. But the question is that when you're really talking about the vast majority of scripted television, is it liberal or is it conservative? You can always pick one Don Belisario, one Jerry Bruckheimer, but the vast majority of sitcoms, the vast majority of cable television, all of it is dominated by the left, and I have people on tape that I've been revealing, saying, yes, there's active discrimination in Hollywood, yes, we message our programming.
I've read most of your book, and I've got to this point where you even say the television industry made President Obama. I'm quoting you. You say, if the relationship between the Obama administration and the television industry is hot and heavy, there's a reason for that. The television industry made Obama.
Yeah. I mean, I do believe that President Obama is a media-made candidate. This is a man who didn't have a lot of background.
But hang on a second. He was a successful campaigner.
He was a great campaigner.
He won over the electorate with his arguments.
And with the help of the media. Absolutely.
But the media assisted every other political competitor in exactly the same way.
Did they really help Sarah Palin? I mean, it seems to me that Tina Fey was probably the single most damaging...
Sorry, sir, but Sarah helped Sarah Palin. She's got a whole network behind her. She's an employee of Fox News now.
Well, Sarah Palin was not an employee of Fox News at the time of the election, and Barack Obama was not an employee of any network at the time of the election either. But that doesn't mean that the media was not biased in favor of Barack Obama. They clearly were. I mean, the heads of most of the major networks were monetarily supporting President Obama during the election cycle. The Hollywood industry was largely supporting him, not only in terms of news programming, but in terms of actual scripted content. I mean, Oprah was out there campaigning. Oprah is probably the single most powerful woman in the history of American television, and she was out there actively campaigning for President Obama while saying she would not have Sarah Palin on the show because that would just be too partisan.
How are children's shows also biased?
Well, children's shows are biased in a slightly more subtle way. I think that they're really biased toward a kind of self-esteem ethos, the idea that, to paraphrase Barney, everyone is special, right? An unearned self-esteem, everyone in his or her own way, down to gender.
And you're saying that's as a result of a left-leaning bias. I thought that there are many child psychologists, regardless of political persuasion, who would say it's rather appropriate to affirm children.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of psychologists who do say that, but it definitely is a more left-leaning perspective on psychology, that self-esteem unearned is something that ought to be put upon children, especially if you look at Sesame Street. I mean, Sesame Street has been kind of the one that's drawn a lot of the fire here because people make it out like I'm trying to actually, baste Big Bird, but basically, but essentially, the Sesame Street, I interviewed one of the creators, a guy named Mike Dan, who's VP of Children's Television Network, and he actually said that the point of Sesame Street was to reach out to black and Hispanic children because, quote, there is no reading material in black households. Well, to me, I mean, that's just kind of soft bigotry of low expectations.
Ben Shapiro, I quite like Sesame Street. Thanks.
So, we can jump right into the Oscars. So, the big winner at the Oscars last night was not Moonlight. The big winner at the Oscars last night was Donald Trump. That was the big winner at the Oscars last night because Donald Trump basically could sit there and watch Hollywood make a mockery of itself. Sally Cohn, one of my favorite people on the left, of MSNBC and CNN fame, you remember her, hands up, don't shoot. Sally Cohn tweeted out right before the Oscars that she hoped every single speech was political. To which I tweeted, so does every Republican in the country. We all want every speech to be political. Because the more political these speeches are, the better off Republicans are, because watching all of these sort of comforted, rich, limousine liberal socialists ripping on America is really something that off-puts a lot of voters, and people react to that by voting for people on the Republican side of the aisle. Hollywood has never driven people into the arms of the Democrats, except through kind of their subtle cultural moments, but they don't drive people into the arms of the Democrats by just shouting about how terrible Republicans are. This is something that Hollywood gets wrong. The stuff that Hollywood is good at, creating story, creating character, that stuff can help convince people that Democrats are right. But it doesn't convince people Democrats are right when Marlon Brando sends up Sacheen Littlefeather at the Oscars in 1973, a Native American spokeswoman, to pick up his award and rant and rave about how America's mean to the Native Americans. Nobody voted Democrat because of that. And nobody voted Democrat in 2003 because Michael Moore got up at the Oscars and talked about the fictional president, George W. Bush, getting us into a fictional war. Hollywood people think that we want to hear what they have to say. We don't. We want to hear the stories they have to tell, but we don't actually want to hear the things they have to say because the things they have to say are generally stupid. They don't know anything about politics, so why in the world would we listen to them when it comes to politics? But again, Hollywood doesn't know that. So instead, what Hollywood does is they think that we're watching because we want to hear their opinions on politics. So Jimmy Kimmel just couldn't help himself. He opened up with a bunch of jokes about Trump. Here were just a few of them.
It's so easy to reach out and heal. And I want to say, maybe this is not a popular thing to say, but I want to say thank you to President Trump. I mean, remember last year when it seemed like the Oscars were racist? Braveheart in this room, and he's not going to unite us either, okay? Meryl, stand up if you would. Everybody, please join me in giving Meryl Streep a totally undeserved round of applause, will you?
Standing ovation for Meryl Streep. Because she's Meryl Streep. She's like the Beyonce of actresses.
The highly overrated Meryl Streep, everyone.
She actually is overrated. She hasn't been good for 30 years. And it was joke after joke about Donald Trump and how terrible Trump was, and look how wonderful we are, and we love Meryl Streep, and Meryl Streep's the best because she made fun of Donald Trump that one time at some ceremony, and yeah, we love her, and sure, she was in a really crappy movie, Florence Foster Jenkins, that nobody ever saw, but it doesn't matter because Meryl Streep, guys, Meryl Streep. So, yeah, he does all of these jokes in a row about Donald Trump, and we're all supposed to sit there and be like, yeah, this is great, yeah. Well, the real reaction is, can you guys get over yourselves, please? You know, really, this is the best that you can do? These are your best jokes about Donald Trump, calling him racist, and calling, presumably, the people who voted for him racist? And it's a great way to alienate an audience that's already not watching any of your Best Picture nominees. Nothing that was nominated for Best Picture this year did well at the box office. I think the only exception, as far as a movie that did well at the box office, was Arrival. I'm not aware of any other movie that was nominated for Best Picture this year that did over $100 million in business. Did Arrival end up doing $100 million in business? If it did, it was real close. So it was not a blockbuster blowout out of the ballpark. It was a good movie. I enjoyed it, but all of the movies that were nominated this year, again, were seen by pretty much the people in this particular room. And then it didn't stop there. The self-aggrandizement of Hollywood is just unending. Viola Davis won Best Supporting Actress for her role in Suicide Squad. Oh, no, sorry. It was no, not for Suicide Squad. It was for her role in, what was the name of that movie? Fences. Sorry, I got that wrong. But Viola Davis, I thought she was fantastic in Suicide Squad. That's why I thought that she had to win. So was that guy who, like, shot fire from his fingers and everything. Anyway, Viola Davis, she gets up and she gives this speech.
I became an artist, and thank God I did, because we are the only profession that celebrates what it means to live a life.
We're the only profession, the only one that celebrates what it means to live a life. So I was complaining before this show started today that I'm kind of tired. You know the reason I'm kind of tired today? Because my wife has woken up the last several mornings at 4 o'clock in the morning to go into the hospital because she is a doctor and she's in her residency, which means she's getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to help people who in some cases are terminally ill. Clearly, the only profession that cares about living a life, that honors and celebrates living a life, is Hollywood. And it's so just bleh, when Viola Davis says stuff like this. The fact is, the vast majority of people in the United States work jobs where they're helping each other live better lives. But the artists have to pat themselves on the back. And this is what I was saying at the very beginning. The artists in Hollywood have to make themselves feel important one of two ways, because otherwise they're just reading lines for a living and wearing funny costumes. So they have to make themselves feel important one of two ways. One is they make important stories, right? We're going to make a story about a black gay Ute living in Miami, right? That's going to be the thing that makes us important. Or, alternatively, we have to talk about how important we are to everybody else. Now, I don't get on the air every morning and talk about how important my job is. Right? I don't, because it's either important to you or it's not important to you, but I don't have to preach how important what I do is to you because you'll decide for yourself. And I think that's true for the vast majority of people. When you call a plumber, he doesn't show up to your house and go, you know what? It's really important I fix your toilet today. I'm the guy who stands between you and crap running over your floor. And the plumber doesn't do that. He just goes and he fixes your stuff. But the artist community, because they understand that people sort of see them as frivolous, they feel the necessity to go out and talk about how special they are all the time. And this is not underestimating art. I love art. I love the movies. I love books. I love plays. I love the arts. I grew up in the arts. My dad was somebody in the arts. My mom is somebody in the arts. My sister is somebody in the arts. Two of my sisters are people in the arts. I love the arts. They're fantastic. You know, I write novels. I love the arts. But art is wonderful. It's enriching. It can connect us to each other. But the utter arrogance, the true arrogance of saying the only profession that celebrate what it means to live a life, I mean, that's really astounding. You know who else celebrates? Like, literally everyone does. You know who else celebrates what it means to live a life? Morticians, right? I mean, they actually put together the funeral arrangements where we remember people. There's also something that's really high-handed about saying that only the lives we choose to honor in Hollywood are the important ones. Right? She said in this speech, she said, there's one place all the people with the greatest potential are gathered, the graveyard. People ask me all the time, what kind of stories do you want to tell, Viola? And I say, exhume those bodies, exhume those stories, the stories of the people who dream big and never saw those dreams to fruition. And this kind of stuff goes over big in Hollywood. Ooh, the dreams. Ooh, the dreams. Okay, but the reality is, the vast majority of people in the graveyard, their stories will never be told. But they are still remembered by their family. Their impact is still felt. Your life doesn't end when your life ends unless Viola Davis exhumes you and makes a story about you, that's not even real, right? Unless a fictional story about a person who never existed. No, what actually makes your life important is the friends and family around you and the way you impact the world in a better way and the way that you do honorable things for friends and neighbors and make the world a better place.